Boy Called Bat, Chapter 8, 16 Islets. Sometimes Bat wished that Janie went to his school, because it would be kind of neat to see her in the hallways and at lunchtime. But most of the time, he was glad that his school was something he didn't have to share with her. Janie attended Robert E. Willett Elementary School, but this was her last year. Next fall, she would be going to junior high school. Bat went to a private school. It had smaller classes than the public school, and his parents thought it would be a better fit for him, which was fine with Bat. Mr. Grayson was a good teacher who never yelled and who usually let Bat wear his earmuffs if things got too loud. Also, his school, the Saul-Wet School, was named after a type of owl. The main hallway of the Saul-Wet School was a busy place until 8:35 a.m., when class officially started. Until then, it was full of parents walking the younger kids, those in kindergarten and first grade, to their classrooms, and older kids walking themselves, all while the principal, Mrs. Martinez, stood outside of the administration office, smiling and being friendly. "Bat!" called Mrs. Martinez, waving and smiling. Bat didn't feel like talking to Mrs. Martinez, so he pretended he didn't see her and slid to the far side of the hallway as he passed. That way, she couldn't reach out and rumple his hair. Bat hated it when people rumpled his hair, and Mrs. Martinez loved to rumple hair. She never yet rumpled his hair, and Bat wanted to keep it that way. Bat liked the main hallway better when all the other kids were in their classrooms. Right now, Luca and Israel, two kids in Bat's same class, were struggling out of their rain boots onto the big rubber mat. It wasn't raining, but dark clouds peppered the sky in a way that could mean that recess would be wet. At Saul-Wet School, one of the philosophies was that students should go outside, rain or shine or snow. Bat hadn't worn boots, so he didn't have any that he needed to take off. He didn't carry an umbrella either, because the Saul-Wet School didn't allow them in the hallways or classrooms, which Bat agreed was a wise decision. He skirted around a kindergartner whose mother was kneeling in front of him, holding a tissue to his nose. "Blow," she said, and he dodged between a couple of big kids, sixth graders who were tossing a small red rubber ball back and forth. "Balls are supposed to be kept outside," Bat told the slightly smaller of the two kids, a boy he recognized by the red glasses he wore. "Not this ball," said the boy. "This is a special ball." Then he threw the ball over Bat's head to the other kid, a very tall girl who caught it expertly with one hand and laughed. "It looks like a regular ball," Bat said. "It's not like a regular ball," Bat said. "It looks like a regular ball," Bat said. "It's not a regular ball," the boy with red glasses said. Bat had a weird feeling in his stomach, like the boy was tricking him. He didn't know what to say. Just then, Luca and Israel came by, without their rain boots. "Hi, Bat," Israel said. "Do you think it'll rain?" "Maybe," said Bat. "Eventually, yes. But today, maybe." Relieved, Bat watched the two big kids move away toward their classroom, still tossing the ball. "What do you think was special about that ball?" he asked Israel. "Nothing," Israel said. Then Miss Kiko came out of the kindergarten room and rang her handbell. It was a gentle tinkling sound, way better than the harsh, painful scream of Janie's electric school bell system, which Bat had heard last year during a school play he'd gone to watch. To class, it's time for another day." Miss Kiko had a beautiful voice, which is probably why it was her job to announce the start of school. Bat followed Luca and Israel into Mr. Grayson's third grade classroom. "I brought 2 sandwiches for lunch today," Luca was telling Israel, "in case you want to trade cookies for one." "Why would I want to do that?" Israel answered. "I brought my own sandwich." Bat knew why Luca would think Israel wanted to trade. Yesterday he had heard Luca tell Israel that she didn't really like her cream cheese sandwiches, and Israel had replied that he didn't really like the turkey one his mom always made. "I would trade anything for a cream cheese sandwich," he said. He listened to see if Luca would remain would remind Israel of what he had said, but she didn't. Probably Israel was just being nice, Bat interjected, to make you feel better about bringing cream cheese sandwiches to school every day. He probably didn't really want your sandwich. Israel turned around. His face was red, and his eyebrows pointed toward each other, making a wrinkly crinkle in his forehead. Dude, he said to Bat. Bat waited for Israel to say more, but he didn't. Just that one word, dude. Then Lucas started crying. She shoved past Bat to go back into the hallway. He watched her run into the girls' bathroom. Mr. Grayson came over. He was wearing his bright orange tennis shoes today. Bat liked it when he wore those shoes. It was like he was wearing suns on his feet. What's the problem, friends? He asked. Bat embarrassed Luca, Israel said, really loud, making Bat wish he'd had earmuffs. They were in his backpack on his back. I'm sure you didn't mean to embarrass her, did you, Bat? Asked Mr. Grayson. There were 16 eyelets on each of his shoes. Bat counted. 8 on the left side, 8 on the right side. That made 32 eyelets. Bat, can you look up at my face? Mr. Grayson asked. Bat shook his head. 32 eyelets. His own shoes had half as many. 16 eyelets. 4 on each side of each shoe. Mr. Grayson sighed. Okay, Bat, go sit at your table. Bat wondered if anyone in the class had more eyelets in their shoes than Mr. Grayson. He kept his eyes on shoes as he walked through the classroom. Nope, no one did. Chapter 9. Open Door Baby Cake Policy. Mr. Grayson was a good teacher for lots of reasons. He let kids eat snacks at their desk if they were hungry. He didn't make students ask permission to go to the bathroom. He didn't believe in making people apologize. You can't make someone be sorry, he always said. He believed in class pets. That's how he put it. I believe in class pets, he had said on the first day of class when he introduced them to Baby Cakes, the class rabbit. Baby Cakes, a white Angora bunny that looked like a giant fluff ball, lived in a pen in the back of the room, near the bookshelves. It was a big pen with a gate. If anyone ever needs to cuddle, Mr. Grayson said, Baby Cakes is there for you. And that was when the thing that made Mr. Grayson the best teacher Bat had ever had in his life. Open Door Baby Cakes Policy, which meant that any time a kid needed to cuddle, he or she could visit Baby Cakes. No permission needed. No questions asked. Baby Cakes liked carrots and apples and put up with the cuddling. Bat knew the rabbit liked treats better than kids, but he also knew that Baby Cakes was smart enough to realize that the two often went together. The thing about Mr. Grayson's Open Door Baby Cakes policy was that none of the kids wanted to ruin it by overusing it. Bat was Baby Cakes' most frequent visitor. Israel visited the second most, and then probably Jenny was third. A couple of months ago, Israel had given Bat a drawing he had done of Baby Cakes. It was pretty good. Bat usually tried to visit Baby Cakes during recess or lunch, when a visit wouldn't mean leaving group time. But today, he didn't think he could wait until recess. Maybe because he missed the baby skunk so much. When Mr. Grayson had everyone pull out the money game, Payday, that they played on Fridays, Bat slipped away from his table and headed to the back of the room. Today, Baby Cakes wasn't sleeping. She was just sitting in her favorite spot, on top of the plastic hutch where she slept. She looked like white cotton candy. Bat sat close to Baby Cakes and put his hand on her back, just to let her know that he was there. He didn't want to startle her. Break into groups of 4, Mr. Grayson said. Choose a banker and pay everyone $200. For a moment, Bat thought maybe Mr. Grayson was going to let him skip the game and just hang out with Baby Cakes. But then he said, Bat, 5 minutes. Bat didn't want to play Payday. He didn't want to join the class in 5 minutes. But the open door policy didn't mean it was okay to skip the stuff that the class was doing. It was one of those unspoken rules that Mom was always talking about. Those things that people are supposed to know without having to be told. Bat hated unspoken rules. but he loved the open door baby cakes policy. So when the 5 minutes were up, Mr. Grayson said, "Okay, Bat, time's up." Bat reluctantly scooted baby cakes off his lap, where he set her and rejoined the class. The games were all arranged. Jenny Pearson had dealt out $200 for Bat. Luca, Bat saw, had returned from the bathroom with red-rimmed eyes. She was in a different group. "Ready?" Jenny asked. "I guess," Bat said, and he sat in the empty seat between Jenny and Raymond. Across from him, Corey rolled the dice. Bat sighed. It was going to be a long day. Chapter 10. A very long day. Bat was right. It was a long day. The rain that had been threatening came, and after they ate lunch, the students pulled on rain gear to splash in puddles. Bat did not like to get wet. He didn't like it at all. It made his clothes feel sticky and itchy and uncomfortable. Mr. Grayson knew that Bat didn't like to get wet, so even though rain or shine or snow, he asked Bat, "Would you like to spend recess helping me clean baby cake's enclosure?" "Yes," said Bat. Mr. Grayson got a trash bag and Bat scooped the old straw into it. Then they laid out a fresh batch of straw. It smelled like summertime and sunshine. Baby Cakes hopped over to the straw and sniffed it. "She looks happy," Mr. Grayson said. "She looks exactly the same as she always does," Bat answered. Mr. Grayson laughed. Grown-ups were always laughing at things that Bat didn't think were funny, but it didn't bother Bat very much when Mr. Grayson did it. Julio, a fourth grader who everyone said was a natural athlete, came into the classroom. "Mr. Grayson," he said, "Principal Martinez wants to know if you're still going to teach yoga." Sure, Mr. Grayson said. "Tell her I'm all ready to start." Then he said, "Julio, I think you've grown a foot since the last time I saw you." Julio shrugged. "Not that much," he said, "but I've grown an inch since winter break." "I'm not surprised," Mr. Grayson said. "That was 3 months ago." Bat thought about time as he followed Mr. Grayson to the yoga room, and he sat on his mat in the butterfly pose. 3 months, he guessed, could be a little bit of time, or a really long time, depending on who you were. For instance, a monarch butterfly born in the summer lives only about 6 weeks, so 4 months would feel like forever. But a monarch butterfly born in the winter might live for 8 months, so 4 months would be just half its life. If you were a boy with a skunk kit that you were only allowed to keep for a month, time sure would pass much, much too quickly. Bat considered telling Mr. Grayson about the life cycle of the monarch butterfly, but the teacher was too busy unlacing his orange high tops and getting ready to lead the group in yoga. He decided he would talk about monarch butterflies with Mr. Grayson later. But the right later never happened. After yoga, they went back to the 3rd grade room for reading circle. After reading circle, they worked on their volcano projects, which Bet had not been looking forward to. Groups of 4 kids had to work together to build a volcano. Mr. Grayson called it collaborative art. Bet did not like collaboration. He liked to do things himself. That way, if something didn't turn out the way he wanted it to, there was no one else to be mad at. If he wanted to take it apart and start over, no one could tell him not to. But Mr. Grayson wouldn't let Bat be a group of 1. The problem was that no one else in the group seemed to care as much as Bat did. 3 times before 2:45, when class was finally over for the day, Bat's group said, "Mr. Grayson, Bat won't let us help." "I don't need help," Bat told Jenny when she complained for a second time. "It's a group project," she said. "You have to let us help." Israel, who was in Bat's group, kept asking him all kinds of annoying questions like, "Hey Bat, do you think the lava is red enough?" And, "Hey Bat, can you pass me the paste?" Bat ignored the lava question, but about the paste he said, "Glue works better than paste. The paste gets all weird and flaky when it dries." "Okay," said Israel, "pass me the glue then." "I'm using the glue," Bat said. Things would go much more smoothly, but the other kids would just stop asking questions and interfering, and just let him get on with his job.